We're just about to install the knees, but I decided I wanted to make the top of the shear plank out of oak there because, you know, when you're standing at the corner of the boat right there, you look down, you see the top of the shear plank, it's pine or it's cedar or it's mahogany or something. And it's a little different color, so I thought I'd do this and match the color, and I think it'll look a lot better. So I just put a little boat life on the edge of the thing because I wanted to see a little black line, you know, like there is everywhere else. You know, I got that on the edge, and I had taped off the top of the plank. Then I taped off the inside and primed the top of the shear plank with some epoxy. Then I thickened some, and I put some thickened on there, and I also primed the back of the piece that I'm going to put in there. I had already placed it in place, so I have some reference marks there. So when I set it down, you know, I don't have to guess at fore and aft. I can just bring it up to the reference marks and then clamp it in place. I had left a little space back aft. You know, I sprung the guard out a little bit so that piece would go in there really easily. And then once I got it in and glued up, I just tightened the screw that holds the guard up against the transom, and the show was over. Another reason why I isolated the top of the shear plank from the guard is that I want the guard to be removable, because the guards on these boats are always removable. They have to be, because people just beat them all up. So, you know, what you do is you pop out the screws that hold the cap down and unscrew the guard, take it off and put a new one. But if it was glued to the plank, believe me, this epoxy glue holds so good, you just rip the grain right off the shear plank if you tried to get the guard off. This stuff is just a bedding. People always ask me about the hardeners that I use, and you know, which one and you know, why. Well, you know, there's different reasons. There's all kinds of variables here. You have 3 different hardeners, you know, slow, medium, and fast. And I use medium quite a bit, more so than the other 2, but you know, there's a reason sometimes to switch. If you mix up a real big volume of glue, you know, and want to hold on to it for a little while, you're better off with slow hardener, because otherwise it'll go off so fast. And the temperature, you know, I don't try to use slow hardener in the cold temperature. You know, it'll harden, but it's slow, you know. You're better off in the heat with slow hardener. I use the fast hardener too, but basically what I use it for is doing smaller things that I want to, you know, harden or, you know, glue up right away, so I can work with it, you know, in a matter of hours rather than waiting for the next day. You do have to wait, but you just don't have to wait as long. I'm using TotalBoat epoxy to glue this down on there. And, you know, the whole thing's been done with the same high-performance epoxy. So I'm priming up both surfaces because I want to make sure that every possible place that makes contact is glued. And that means the whole thing. It's got to be glued down there really, really nice in order to be right. So this is the way to go right here. This top laminate, and they're all fit. I'm just going to, you know, even the 2 laminates right up and then clamp them together, and they'll fit in the boat perfectly. And now I'm just going to mix some thickener into it and get it just the right consistency, and then I'll spread that on the surface with a tooth trowel, actually. So I get exactly the same amount of glue everywhere. And you know, they're both nice and flat. I just primed them with some epoxy. I had pushed all the laminates right through the planer before I even glued them up. But after I glued it all up, there could have been some little discrepancies in thickness or whatever it is, so I ran the whole knee through the bench planer. And then I'm gluing the top laminate on separately. So it'll come out nice and consistent in thickness and everything else. The reason why I'm putting the top laminate on separately is these laminates, the top ones, have got some pretty squirrely grain in it. You're guessing when you put one through the bench planer as to which direction you put it through there. And the other thing is you can't plane a lot off of it. It'll grab the grain and chip it all up and do everything. So I didn't want to have it on there when I pushed it through the whole thing, because hey, maybe I spoil it and put it on, I wouldn't like it. So, you know, I get a chance to not glue that laminate on and then run it through the bench planer. You know, it's already all planed to thickness. I'm just gluing the top laminate on separately. Once all the glue is spread, I just flap the top right on there, and then I'll pick it up and actually put it in place while it's still in 2 pieces, because I can't clamp it on the bench. The first couple clamps, when you put them on there, the thing's just going to swim all over the place. You can't coordinate it. So I fit them all into the corner of the boat, the bottom laminates and the top ones. So I'm going to clamp both layers into the corner with clamps and make sure they coordinate with each other perfectly. Then I'm going to take a series of clamps and go right around the inside edge vertically and clamp that vertical edge together. But you see, it can't swim around because it's clamped into the corner. I'm going to put 4 or 5 or 6 clamps on that edge. So once I've got the laminates coordinated and secured properly, I can remove the knee and bring it over to the bench and put more vertical clamps around the outboard and after edge. So it's glued up. It's got a lot of clamps on it. It's really glued up good. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing to the other side. Clamp them right into position first. I'm also going to recut the inboard edge of it because I've made the top laminate exactly how I want it, and the bottom laminates are hanging over. You know, I couldn't have done it the other way. So what I do when I pull it out of there is just recut the inboard side of it, and then I'll cut my notch for the inwhale to go in it, and then I can reinstall it. I mean, if you think you could do this without clamping them into position like that, I think you'd be have a rude awakening, because when you put a vertical clamp on without anything holding it in position, when you try to tighten that one clamp, you know, if that clamp is off 10,000ths of an inch or an eighth of an inch or something, as soon as you tighten it, the top laminate will just slide over, you know, and then you have to undo the clamp and try to slide it back, and, you know, you just go through it, and it doesn't make any sense. So, like I say, I clamp it in position first before I put the vertical clamps on it. Pretty comprehensive, you know, it was something to think about, I can tell you that, before I got it done, but there it is. So what I can do then is let it dry, clean off the glue, wipe it up some, and then I'll carry it over when it's dry and put it in position. Well, it's the next day, and I've got the port side lodging knee complete here. Now, quite a few things went on with this knee, and really, they all had to be done that way. I had quite a few laminates here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 laminates, you know, and there were different thicknesses and different stuff like that. You know, each layer was the same thickness, but once it was all glued together, it wasn't necessarily flat on the top and the bottom. So what I did was I put that many laminates through the planer after they were glued. Now I've got the top laminate on. This is the one that's showing the proper grain right here. And I'm going to place it in place here. And you get it in the right position. It fits quite good. Up here, I've got a slot for the inwhale to come into, and I'll fasten the inwhale into that knee like that, and then the cap comes over the top of it like that. So, you know, it's pretty comprehensive, really. It's strong. You know, somebody asked me, what are they for? Well, you know, that thing is pretty strong. You know, it stops this corner from coming apart or closing up, which aids to the stiffness of the boat, really, in general. So, you know, it's really a helpful thing. Now, all right, that's it right there. All right, so I've got it clamped right into the corner with 2 clamps, and now I'm going to drill the holes on the after side of it right here. I'm going to put 2 monster screws in here. I think they're number 24s or something like that. You know, these things are quite big, and they are actually used, really, but they're in perfect condition. So that's what I'm going to use. These things probably, I can't imagine what they're worth, but you know, we're going to wind them right in there like they're not worth anything. Well, now that I've got the knees in there, I'm going to get out the inwhales. And that just means you're going to get it out of the pile of lumber and get it down to size, whatever size it is that you want. These sizes right here, this is 2.5 by 3/4. And of course I had to run it through the planer to get it down to 3/4. And I'm just running it through the table saw to get it down to 2.5. Another thing when you're ripping something like this on the table saw is to remember to keep the concave side away from the fence. You have to have the convex side against the fence. And the reason for it is that, you know, if a convex shape goes by that fence, it pushes it away from the fence at the blade. So once that convex shape kind of goes by, then your material's away from the fence, and you have to try to force it back to the fence. And everything is wrong with it. It just is not the thing to do, you know. And these pieces can't be made perfectly straight. They just can't. Every time you cut them, they spring a little different and everything. So you're stuck with this as a problem. You have to do it the way I'm doing it. And sometimes you might notice that when I first start, it kind of pops up a little bit when I move my hands, and I really don't care because less chance of damaging it actually, and once you get enough weight in front, then it kind of holds itself down, and the outfeed table is the proper height, so you know it isn't a problem. Sometimes with a piece like this, it's curved in both directions, so you have to kind of make a choice as to which way you're going to do it. It doesn't really matter if the piece isn't perfectly straight, because we're going to spring it into the boat to the marks that we have, you know, planned for it, and you know, it doesn't matter what shape it comes over there. It's going to be the shape I want it when we're done. So this is Quercus alba as well. This is really nice white oak stock. I mean, you know, this whole boat, all the hardwood is white oak, and this isn't any different. And it's quarter sawn, so it just looks fantastic. It really does. And, you know, these are the trickiest parts of that whole boat, to get in place and have them butt into the knees on both ends without a gap. You know, I've always found it to be a little difficult, and this time I'm going to make some extra procedures, you know, some extra steps to get it to happen exactly right. You know, because I just don't like to see spaces anywhere. I want things to be tight. So that's a pretty cool process actually, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how I go about it, because it's something you might run into at some point in time.